So I've been thinking about creating this video for several months now, and I just got back from another great day in Fresno looking at properties, and I think now's the time. And really, it's just about, if you live out of town, maybe you live in the Bay Area, maybe you live in LA or San Diego, or maybe you live out of state, maybe you're in Texas, or maybe you're on the East Coast or whatever. Why should you look at Fresno, and why should you be looking at the pride of ownership rentals that I'm creating? So I thought I would take a minute just to talk about that, and sort of go through, some of the reasons why you might want to consider Fresno, where some of you might be thinking, why would I do that? So let me just share that with you. So first, I'm going to sort of focus on California, right? So if you live in Southern California or you live in the Bay Area, why should you think about Fresno? Then I'm going to step back and talk to the folks out of state, right? If you're on the East Coast or central U.S. or, maybe somewhere on the West Coast, Oregon, Seattle, whatever. Why should you think about Fresno? I'll do one slide. There's lots of videos on this channel, but I thought I would just summarize so you don't have to bounce around sort of my experience with Fresno and more specifically my experience with affordable housing in Fresno, because again, that's what I focus on. It's what I create and would recommend for you. And then I thought I would close with kind of a fun slide. There's a couple of things that, I've come to appreciate about Fresno that most folks don't. So, some of these facts are going to come from my experience, and many of them are just from quick Google searches. All right. First and foremost, if you live/invest in Southern California Bay Area, it's just flat out time to admit that your return on capital is going to be far better in Fresno or LA, right? If you're looking at committing net new dollars, if you're looking at potentially 1031 in capital, maybe you've had something for decades and you just want to get out, there's, your return in Fresno is likely double. And for many of you, it could be triple, right? The cap rates and the compression and all the extra headaches that are coming from local governments in LA and San Francisco, make Fresno, a much better location. I think the other thing is obvious is that I think, San Francisco, Oakland, those areas have had rent control for quite some time now. I did read about a measure that was just recently passed in LA, sort of, a stopgap measure. And I think it's coming. Frankly, I think it's coming to all California. So it's not like Fresno's immune. I do think that the rental compression and whatnot will affect landlords in these expensive cities, because let's face it, if you're buying out there, you have to get maximum rents to justify your deployment of capital. And there's just room to run in Fresno, and there's multiple tiers, and I just don't see, if you're investing with me, I just don't see the impact that that could happen. Again, I could be wrong, right? We'll see what happens in November and after that. But I don't think there's any question that rent control is going to be a thing in LA and San Francisco to a far greater degree than Fresno. I think the system in these other large cities, because of the housing prices and, just the average person can't live there, is, frankly, I think it's skewed too far. But it is, you have to operate in the, the rules that you're given, right? I spoke with a very small landlord in San Francisco. I think they have 2 units, and unfortunately, they're trying to evict one of their tenants for non-payment. And she just told me that the system, right, the whole process of evicting a tenant in San Francisco is now so onerous because now you have to fund an attorney for your tenant that you're evicting. And I had to ask and re-ask that question a couple of times because it's just mind-boggling. And I've done no independent verification, but also I don't know why this landlord would lie to me. So, maybe there's extenuating circumstances that I wasn't given color to, but that's just, frankly, as a landlord, that's a horrible thought if I had to do that. I think, one of the things we need to do as investors is kind of look in the future and kind of guesstimate or look for trends, or, what are things I could do to protect myself and also take advantage. And one of the things that I think is probably going to happen to sort of mom and pop landlords is there's going to be a reason for us to sell, right? Whether it's just appreciation, whether it's just the hassle of these different programs, right? Because the landlord is the big greedy person who's sticking it to the tenants, and all these things that that are popular and easy to say, and frankly wrong in many cases, but still it's popular to say. So I think when that happens, and if it happens in mass, values are going to be hit really hard in places like LA and San Francisco and the like. So one of the things you might want to look at doing is repositioning your equity base via 1031 exchange. Some of you are going to sell and be happy and take the cash and run, and good for you. But one of the things that really set us up was some 1031 exchanges that we did near the peak at 2008, and boy, we were glad we did that. The other thing I would ask yourself is, do yourself a favor and sort of kind of look out 10 years, maybe 20 years, and what area has more upside, right? I think values in LA and in the Bay Area will always be higher, but with the advent of technology, with the advent of this, bullet train or, high-speed rail or whatever you want to call it eventually happening, and San Francisco being sort of halfway between LA and San Francisco, I think it's pretty obvious which city is going to have more population. More population breeds more demand breeds higher prices. I think it's that simple. So I know which area I think is going to have greater appreciation over the next decade or two. The other one to look about is, which one has more downside protection, right? Lots of things could happen, right, throughout California, and which one has the better chance of going down 50%, right? Which one is closer to the rebuild cost than others, right? There's a lot of, I don't know what you want to call it, value or independent value of being in the Bay Area or Southern California above the construction cost, right? And if something were to happen, that value can get compressed. One of the things that we took advantage of during the downturn was buying stuff below replacement cost. And I know which area is closer to replacement cost, and thus has more downside protection. And it's not the Bay Area, it's not SoCal. So for my investment dollars, I know which one has more downside. All right, so now let me talk to the people that are out of state, right? You don't have any investments in Cali, or maybe you do, but you live in another state, so which is all right. I always say live where you want, but invest where it makes sense. One of the things that you need to appreciate is Prop 13. If you don't know what that is, it's a statewide limit on how much your property taxes can go up. Why is this important? Texas is a great example. It's one of the reasons we actually never invested in Texas. Is Texas gets the has a good history and doesn't have these ups and downs and all of that. However, they reassess property tax every year, and I don't know about you, but the last 5 to 7 years have been pretty good. So I'm hearing about a lot of landlords who did choose to invest in Texas being caught in a bad financial strait because what used to cash flow is now been eaten up by the rise in real estate taxes. And there's actually a few talking about letting their properties go because the taxes have gotten so high. What used to cash flow a couple $100, went to break even, and it is now negative. And if you follow me, I call those alligators. And if you have an alligator, it's never fun. And one of the outcomes is just letting the bank have it. So that could happen. The other thing you need to appreciate is Fresno, being a part of California, is the Farm Belt, right? And talk about an industry that is not impacted by the downturns in technology or oil or whatever. Until they invent a pill or a whatever that sort of lets us consume all the calories and nutrition we need. We all need to eat, and I could not imagine a more more solid base of employment than agriculture. The other thing you need to appreciate if you live out of state is California does offer above average appreciation. It's still the most populous state. Fresno, being, as you'll see in one of the facts, I think it's the fifth largest city in California, and it has some of the greatest upside, into the future, as sort of migration paths, are away from the expensive, sort of coastal and to the inland areas. And Fresno is the largest city not on the coast, which is should be telling to all of us. The other thing I think that's fun is it's no snow, no tornadoes, no hurricanes. And then if you want to pick on something, because we're in California, earthquakes, Fresno actually sits on some of the most stable land in California. Not that it's immune, I'm not saying that, but when you look and you talk about the fault lines and all of that, Fresno itself sits in a pretty stable area. But, now that I've said that, knock on wood, they're going to have an earthquake. But anyways, the facts are it's pretty stable. Fresno City, as you'll see, is over 500,000 people, but the county, right, which is what I think about, is nearly 1 million people, and are forecast to be over 1 million people this year or next, which makes it a very investable market, because you have a lot of people that are always out looking for properties and rentals and the like. So I just want to go through a few things. One of the things, being an out-of-state or out-of-town landlord, is property management is key. I spent the first 6 years firing 6 different property managers because, just lots of reasons. Every reason you can think of is I had to go through. So one of the things you'll get when you invest with me is you'll just plug right into my team and be a part of that, and you'll be able to, threaten them and use the weight of my account to, make sure you get the right kind of service. Again, I talked about this earlier. It wasn't impacted for me around the .com bust. That was sort of 3 or 4 years into our investment career, and it really hit the valley where I live, obviously pretty hard, but Fresno just kept on chugging, which was interesting to watch. Incomes have been increasing. The employment base has been diversifying. Recently it's become a very transportation hub given its location, but it's fun to watch. I think when I started it was around 46, and I think it's almost 60 grand now is the average income. The thing that I care about is the rental pool is very stable, right? There's always going to be people, it's always has tenants looking for houses and units and things of that nature. Frankly, long vacancies just don't happen if you've taken the time to have a quality unit, especially if you have a quality single family home, right? Vacancies just don't happen, especially if you, again, you have these kind of pride of ownership rentals that I speak about. The other thing is, small apartments and buildings are available. One of the things that you'll see in Fresno is the whole land of 5s and 6s and 10s are out there. It was very common to be built in the 60s and 70s and owned by mom and pop landlords, and they're still out there and available. I bring that up because one of the things we did is the single family market rolled over as we bought small apartment buildings because they were very, immune to the price drops, and actually rental rates went up. The other thing is, Fresno for a long time just didn't show up on the radar of big money, I'll call them landlords, whether it be the hedge funds or other areas. It is certainly now, right, with the high-speed rail and these other things coming on, showing Fresno as the place to be in California. It's now showing up, and you can see some of the big guys coming in and buying the monster units. The 3s and the 400, 500 unit things, and new developers coming in. So it's on the radar now. Rents have been rising the last couple of years, especially for quality units. It's a good time to be a landlord. And the other thing I need to give a shout out to Fresno for is their downtown area is seeing a huge investment. Lots of new mixed use, lots of retail and focus, and just a lot of good things going on in the downtown area. It wasn't that case 15 years ago. It's almost night and day different now. So shout out to them for doing that. So here's some facts. I think it's just one sheet. You might have known this one, but here it is. Fresno's halfway between LA and San Francisco. Why this should be interesting to you, it's reason why Amazon and other large distributors have planted huge warehouses, like millions of square feet in Fresno. They actually have a whole area in town that's just these monster warehouses because of the whole same day shipping. right? So you can do, you can hit the most populous areas in San Francisco and in LA from Fresno in a single day. So that's why you're going to see the big boys, which Amazon's already done. And when Amazon does something, others are following. I had heard Fresno was the fourth, but my search this morning had it as the fifth, so I'll just leave it as the fifth largest city in California, which is interesting. What I thought was really interesting is actually makes it the 34th largest city in the entire U.S. That shocked me, and I've been there for 16 years now. I didn't realize it was the 34th largest city in the entire U.S. Pretty amazing. This is something you see all the time, and I think it's a good thing. Is it's a very big melting pot, right? There's 100 different nationalities reflected in the population, and you can really see that driving around town. And it's frankly good to see, and it just makes it a very, very diverse and lots of things to do in the area. National parks, Yosemite, right? Only 90 minutes away if you're very outdoorsy, right? It's right there. I thought this was funny. I don't know if you know how raisins were created. Just like the potato chip, raisins were created accidentally when some grapes were left on the vine a little bit too long. And if this is, what I got this morning was all raisins are grown within 60 miles of Fresno. That's what, again, the search said. It seems odd to me, but, maybe it's true. This one I thought was really cool, especially for us Bay Area and SoCal folks. The average worker's commute is only 22 minutes. So, while they're still a very large city, it's got very good infrastructure and highways and thoroughfares and all of that. So 22-minute commute. And the other thing, it's, the reason why I think Fresno is going to see a big uptick is, a family can live very comfortably on $60,000 a year, right? I don't know about you, but you probably couldn't rent a closet in some of the cities that we all live in for $60K a year. So it's one of the reasons that it's seeing a lot of inflow of people from out of state, from around the world, and frankly from the more expensive areas, right? If you're a 25-year-old just out of college, do you want to try to live with 4 or 5 roommates, here in the Valley or LA, or do you want to try to go, live in a small house with maybe your girlfriend or boyfriend? It's just night and day difference, quality of life. So, if you live out of town and are thinking about investing in rental properties, I think you can do a lot worse than Fresno, and hopefully that's what came across in this presentation. If you want to talk about Fresno or anything I've said here, best way to get a hold of me, there's my email, is mzuber@onerentalatatime.com. I did that because, I talk about this, and some of you will go out and look at Realtor.com or Redfin and just start looking at properties. And I think if you do that without an experienced guide and someone willing to help and provide advice, you could get led down the wrong path, right? There are certainly some things in some areas you want to stay away from. So, my hope is you watch this and you get interested and you reach out to me and we start talking about what might make sense for you. Because again, I'm creating lots of solid, rental properties and have a lot of experience down there and look forward to helping more and more people. So in the end, if you're, living out of town, whether you're in SoCal or the Bay Area or maybe out of state, do me a favor, like this video, leave a comment. Another thing, please share the video with your friends. If you belong to a local real estate group, maybe share this with them, the leaders of that, because I think they're always looking for different areas, and I'd love to come speak at your real estate event. And then lastly, most importantly, I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, as you've all heard me, and we got some work to do. I think the latest total this morning was 225. So if you like this video, please subscribe, and in the end, have a great day.